We've titled this next bit, meanwhile, back on the farm, some perspectives. So we've seen the big picture, and as Mike just painted that. And what we would like to do and for the next half hour is to have three representations from this part of the world, with Hamish Orbell, Hamish and Julia Mackenzie, and lastly Ryan O'Sullivan, giving a perspective in the first two instances on the farms they have in outstanding environments and the outstanding management and farming jobs they've done, and how they, in taking over from the preceding generations and that legacy, now perceive their farming and how they are handling their environmental ambitions and vision and responsibilities. And then we'll cut to Ryan O'Sullivan, who was a Nuffield Scholar in 2017, large-scale dairy farming equity manager in the Fairlie area, but his Nuffield work involved a lot of travel around the world, and I've asked him to look at global food production and the expectations of farming environment and stewardship within the framework of his Nuffield. So while they come up to the stage, why don't we just take a minute stretch after quite a long sitting session, and we'll reconvene in 60 seconds. Thanks.
Is there a mic right? We use that one more brand new.
You want to speak from here or there? Yeah. So it's just green to go. Yeah. It goes right. So everything's there from there.
Oh, yep.
Are you speaking off the cuff?
Yeah, basically, yeah, because those lights don't help.
All right, 60 seconds is up, thanks. Can we take a seat? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. My pleasure to introduce Hamish Orbell, Clayton Station, that many of you will know and have enjoyed time at his property. Clayton was a focus farm a few years ago with Hamish and Anna at the helm, and Hamish has been deeply involved in the DFA and in the South Canterbury branch for many years, knows the country well. Hamish.
Thank you very much, Tony. Yeah, I guess I was asked to speak about, in ways, environmental succession and the property that, like Mission Jubes, with their property, are very fortunate, grateful to our parents for, I guess, their foresight in developing it to what it is now and leaving it in in my case, in a very good state for me to continue on with their development. A little bit of brief background to Clayton. When my grandfather bought it in 1964, it was 9,000 hectares, 12 paddocks, 12 paddocks, 5 hill blocks, with no fertiliser history, no tracks, no trees. Very extensive, through a lot of hard work by mainly my parents and staff. It got developed into, in the late 90s, still 9,000 hectares, 140 odd paddocks, 54 hill blocks, 54k of tree lanes, 12, I think it is, nutrient or catch ponds. So there's been a lot of development go on. Since then, through tenure review and selling a piece of land, we are now 4,000 hectares with 169 paddocks and I think 25 hill blocks. As a big part of that, we've gone from about 8,000 stock units to initially about 25,000 before we went through tenure review. And the deer were at the original start of it in the late 70s were a very small part of the property. It has grown, I guess, dramatically in the last probably 10 years, somewhat through the focus farm. Through the focus farm, realised that our deer were run very low key, and we didn't have a lot of inputs into them. Most of the development went, as you can see, this is just a small picture of our flats, into more the sheep and cattle side of things. Probably in the last 10 years, we've grown the deer farm dramatically, and through that, with the production lift through the focus farm, we had to look at how we were doing it. We're now 4,000 hectares with 22,000 stock units, so very intensive, but we had to basically rethink the way we ran the deer farm. It's now an integral part of our business with sheep, cattle going through it. As you can see here, this is just a mob of hinds looking down onto a flat. Typical of the development back in the, I guess, early 70s, this area was a swamp. It got fenced up straight away after coming out of a swamp, and most of this area here is now sunk probably 8 inches through drainage. So everything changed shape a little bit. Through our development phase, we decided that we had to fence it differently. And right in the centre of the picture was a part of that development, looking at where the deer were wallowing, looking at where all the creeks were running. Because it's a swamp, it was very, very difficult to exclude every waterway out of, and my personal opinion is I can't afford to exclude every single waterway out of the deer, but trying to develop a program and a policy around excluding them out of the major waterways and some of the more sensitive areas. So over the last 10 years, we've developed, which I'll get to the sort of main nutrient catch area. All the water off Clayton now goes through one, if not 3, nutrient catch areas or sediment catch areas to look at that environmental footprint that we are doing with intensification. As you can see here, that's looking back into where you're looking before. It's looking backwards, back into the deer farm. We had a lot of willows in the deer farm that, to be terribly honest, were a bit of pain in the backside. We wanted to incorporate shelter as part of our plan. Fencing some of the waterways off, it's going to take 15 years to probably grow the trees we want. So we've taken out, and I guess I'm quite a perfectionist, I don't really like a messy environment. We tidied up some of the willows, they kept on falling over. So we ended up getting a buncher in and taking all the willows out at 3 metres up. So they will all regrow. We thin them out a little bit. We've still got shade and shelter, so we've got the best of both worlds, and over time I think they've now just been classified as a noxious weed. We will be removing them once the other tree lanes start coming up. And again, sort of in the centre, so this is all the hill behind us is all part of the deer farm now. All these front faces, all the water runs through these 3 or 4 nutrient sediment catch areas, which in the centre of the picture there is is one of them. And we've fenced off again our major waterway down the centre. But to fence every waterway is extremely difficult and extremely costly. But it's finding that balance for us. Again, as you can see, there is not a lot of shade and shelter. This is just a mob of deer at weaning time, or mob of hinds going back out. There's not a lot of shade and shelter in our deer farm because of the development that has gone in the past. Our idea is to try and build on this for the next generation. As you can sort of see in the distance, you can see the trees are starting to regrow again. This is just 2 weeks ago. So yeah, they will regrow and tidy back up. And it's finding the balance between this sort of country, which is where our hinds live, and our flats, which are extremely wet, which is the balancing act that we work with. This is the start of, it looks extremely messy, but it's reality. This is the start of our nutrient catch area. It started off in willows, very similar to the left-hand side. We've cleared out all the willows in here, totally got rid of the whole lot, and unfortunately through the 2 years of drought, anything we planted in there died. So my sort of 5-year plan has turned into probably a 7, 8, 9-year plan. It's now sown down in grass. So again, all the water comes off Clayton, off the west side, comes down through these areas. And this is the major one at the bottom of the farm. Because we also found that we were, through the Focus Farm, we started testing all our water, and that's what sort of got us really into all this sort of thing. We found that E. coli was one of our major issues, which again leads into some of the things that were done in the past, redevelopment in the early 70s, 80s, possibly aren't necessarily acceptable now, and what we're doing now may not be acceptable in 30 years' time. We noticed our worst problem was E. coli, and it was coming out of small streams that came from that very first photo right down across the whole farm, which were man-made streams for stock water that were put in the early 70s. With studying some of our E. coli levels and finding out where it was coming from, we've now got rid of one of the creeks and put in articulated water schemes. That again has had flow-on effects for our stock health, performance. Just another photo of the start of the nutrient catch area. And does this play? No. Oh, yep, there. This is, again, another one. Several people have told me that I need to probably sack my spraying contractor for the strips on the hill, but it was part of my plan to look at development and trying to improve our production out on the hill without taking everything out, and making sure that we had fawning shelter and also nutrient loss, E. coli loss off the hill. So we sprayed in strips out of our hill to get better production, but also keep that shade and shelter.